All right, everybody. Today we get to talk about everybody's favorite transgender TV show, Breaking Bad. For those of you guys that didn't know, Breaking Bad is actually the trans TV show. In case some of you weren't aware of this, in the trans flag, of course, post your trans flags in chat. The trans flag. Let me go ahead and bring it up on screen. Contains three simple colors: blue, pink, and white. Now, the blue represents Walter White's blue sky methamphetamine. The pink represents Jesse, Pink Man. And the white, I think you guys can all guess, represents Walter White. This is the Breaking Bad flag, as many have claimed. But in all seriousness, we have to talk about Breaking Bad. In fact, we get to talk about Breaking Bad. One of the greatest shows ever. If you haven't watched it, then Jesus Christ, are you just torturously depriving yourself of pure cinematic art? Please, watch Breaking Bad, and frankly, watch Better Call Saul afterwards. Or better yet, watch Better Call Saul first, and then watch Breaking Bad. I'm pretty sure it completely works to start with one show, or with Better Call Saul, and then watch Breaking Bad. Are there any big... I assume you could watch them, Better Call Saul, then Breaking Bad, and not one or the other. I assume they don't ruin each other or anything like that. Regardless. With that said, Breaking Bad has not been on TV for many years now. Though Better Call Saul, its prequel show, is still on, though coming to an end soon, Breaking Bad is more popular now than arguably it's ever been. Isn't that kind of wild? Breaking Bad was one of the most popular shows ever on TV, and it's been over for it ended in 2015, I think. So it's been over for over 5 years, 6 or 7 years now, and is more popular than it's ever been. People are pumping out memes about it. People are watching it like crazy. People are watching it for the first time. My YouTube algorithm is just packed with recommendations of reaction videos to people watching Breaking Bad for the first time. And these are all ended in 2013, even longer ago. And I'm seeing tons of people watching it for the first time and posting reaction videos on YouTube, and they're going viral. Breaking Bad ended a decade ago nearly, and it's more popular than it's ever been. I just got my mom to watch it a couple months ago, and she loved it. She's finishing up Better Call Saul now. As you can imagine, Breaking Bad is a popular, beloved show. And every popular, beloved show ends up growing a cancerous tumor in their fan base. A portion of the fan base that ends up becoming its loudest, most toxic, most horrible segment, and yet tends to end up being, in the minds of many people, the representatives of that community. Come on, let's admit that this is true. Whenever a really obnoxious portion of a community, pops up, they tend to become the part of a community that you think of when you think of that piece of media. Am I right? You think brony or My Little Pony, you think the most cringy images you've ever seen of a brony on the internet, right? That's just how things work, right? Steven Universe had the same issue. I thought it was a pretty cute, good show, and I gave it a try. Not exactly for me. I didn't watch much of it. But, I definitely thought that a lot of the hatred it got was a result of a fan base that had a portion of it that was very cringy. Rick and Morty faces a very similar problem. And much like Rick and Morty, a little bit of its fan base has kind of bubbled up into a toxic little tumor that's shown itself, and that's kind of resulted in the fan base kind of being represented by those people. And in the case of Breaking Bad, it is people that simply did not understand the intentions of the writers, or frankly, how to be a good person, if we're being really honest, in regards to Walter, put your dick away, Walter. I'm not sucking your dick, Walter. Anyway, so the Skyler hate. We got to talk about the Skyler hate. So Hypers in chat, if you have never seen Breaking Bad and you desperately need me to give you a breakdown of the important part of the Walter Skyler dynamic and why it's so problematic, I'm gonna do it anyway because I have to for the video. But I just want to know how many of you have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about here. Breaking Bad is a show primarily about this man right here. His name is Walter White, though many of you may know him simply as Heisenberg. He was a high school chemistry teacher who had a very, very, very impressive history and education in regards to his knowledge on chemistry. Though unfortunately, due to a spin of bad luck and some poor life decisions, he has ended up, instead of being the millionaire or potentially billionaire pharmaceutical and chemical or chemistry, whatever the fuck company owner that he could have ended up being, he is instead a minimum wage earning, miserable high school chemistry teacher. And the show starts on his 50th birthday when he gets the worst news that he could possibly get. He's got terminal lung cancer with, if he's lucky, a year or two to live with treatment, with very good and expensive treatment. Oh, yes, and of course he also has a shitty second job working at a car wash because he can't make enough working as a teacher. So off the bat, it really seems like, okay, so we're getting some pretty obvious, like, left-wing, kinda, at least vaguely, as far as America's concerned, progressive, fuck you and your eyebrows! Wipe down this! I love that scene, holy shit. No, but in all seriousness, we've already got some, like, genuine progressive, at least as far as America is concerned, messaging here. This is a guy who's clearly working his ass off. He has done everything anyone could possibly do to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. He's worked, he went to school, he was smart, he's a fucking genius. He made one tiny bad decision in selling the shares of a company he owned when he was younger, and now he is doomed to a life of borderline poverty. And now he's being hit with the option of death, or like very soon death, or delayed death, along with insane amounts of debt and insane medical bills. Now, here's where things start to get interesting. Later into the show, or actually I should stop here and talk about Walt's relationship. Walter has a child and a pregnant wife. His child is like 17 or 16 years old. He's like a teenager. He's in high school, and he's got cerebral palsy. He's disabled. His wife is pregnant. And not only that, but, like, their marriage is kind of not on the rocks, really. On the rocks is honestly too severe to say. Their marriage feels dull, worn down, old. They've been married for, what, like 15 years, 20 years at least, because they were, married already when they had their kid. So, like, they've been married at least as long as the kid's been alive, and the kid's in high school. So they've been married a long time. In the sense that, like, their marriage is, like, not unhappy, but it's like, they're getting a little bit bored of each other, I guess you could say. Their sex life isn't super exciting. He's like she kind of comes off a little bit naggy, but, like, it's clear that it's because of their situation, not because that's who she is. Like, the things that she would, like, nag him about in, like, the first episode or whatever would be like, well, you used the wrong credit card to buy this thing. That's the card we don't use because we can't, like, that the interest or whatever is too high on that. We're not gonna be able to afford to pay it off. Like, it's stuff like that, like stuff that's involving their shitty financial situation. The show does a lot to hammer home that their relationship would be a lot happier were finances and, whatnot such a big issue. As the show goes, Walt ends up being offered money to pay for his treatment. He goes to a dinner or a birthday party of his ex best friend / business partner Elliot. Now, he sold his share of the company that Elliot and him started when they were in college, in grad school, I think it was, for like $4,000 or $8 grand, something like that. back when he was in grad school, and it paid a few months of rent, as he says, and he thought it was a smart decision at the time. The company was called Gray Matter Technologies. We come to find out, in modern day, many years later, Gray Matter Technologies is now worth billions of dollars, and Elliot and his wife, who we also kind of get a vibe like there was something between Elliot's wife and Walt at some point, are now billionaires. And they live in a beautiful mansion, and their lives are everything that Walt's life could have been. And right off the bat, we are given a very clear insight into one of Walt's biggest character flaws. And this is where I disagree with much of the online left. And I actually think the online left is wrong about one of the big messages of Breaking Bad. Walt is offered by Elliot two things. Initially, when Skyler, against Walt's wishes, because Walt didn't want Elliot knowing, Skyler tells Elliot Walt has cancer. So Elliot, during his birthday party, sits Walt down. They're catching up and they're talking. And Elliot, in a nice way, offers Walt a high-level job at Gray Matter Technologies, with great health insurance and very high pay. Walt turns this down, and Elliot reveals he knows about the cancer and straight up offers to pay for all treatment. Walt turns him down and angrily leaves the party, with Skyler also quite upset about it. He leaves the party angry at Skyler for her telling Elliot, because quote-unquote, you knew he'd do this. So right off the bat, we get a really big insight into Walt's character flaw, and the show also strikes off one of the opinions a lot of left-wing fans of the show like to make. Breaking Bad is not a show about a man with no other choice making methamphetamine to pay his medical bills. Not even in the beginning was it about that. Walt always had the option of asking Elliot and Gretchen for help. He could have always gone to them for money to pay for all of his treatments. He denied it because of his pride and toxic masculinity. He goes on to detail later on in the show why he turned down the offer. Skyler gives a small amount of insight into it as well. From what we're able to tell, Walt's father was very hard on him growing up and was not a big fan of charity, believed that a man ought to be able to provide for his family. A man ought to be able to, on his own, take care of his family, or he's not a man at all. We even get a little bit of insight into that when, with a few of Gus's lines. The way that he kind of jabs at Walter's very easy to bruise masculinity. There's a couple of scenes in the show that I didn't even notice the first time around that my mom noticed. There's a scene where Walt goes to buy a new hot water heater for his family. They multiple times throughout the show complain about the bad hot water heater. Now, Walt, when he's talking to the, burly kind of manly man at the store, he noted, there's this very interesting detail I didn't notice before. Walt is copying the physical mannerisms of the manly man showing him the stuff at the store. When the guy crosses his arms, Walt looks down at him for a second and then crosses his arms. When the guy puts his hands on his hips, Walt notices it and puts his hands on his hips. I didn't even fucking notice that before. Walt literally copies more masculine men and their mannerisms, and I didn't even fucking notice it. It's a small character detail in the show I didn't even fucking notice. He will in real time copy men that he views as more masculine than him. He'll copy their mannerisms because he's so insecure about his masculinity. So much of his motivation was that if he accepts help from anybody, God forbid the man who now has the girl that he liked when he was, a younger man, then that makes him less of a man. That he would rather turn to making drugs, starting a criminal empire, and becoming an egomaniac focused on growing the empire business because he feels like he's had, one, a successful, prosperous life that he is owed, taken from him, and two, that his masculinity is bruised. By the way, you guys should really go back and watch that hot water buying scene and look at what I was talking about. It's a really neat little detail they threw in. And I didn't even notice it my first two watch-throughs of the show. My mom pointed out, and I was like, holy shit, yeah, he is doing that. They put a lot of work into pointing out that Walt's masculinity is extremely easy to bruise And it is the main reason why, like, Walt does a lot of the really heinous shit he does. It's not that he wants to provide for his family and take care of them. He does. He loves his family and he does want to take care of them. That is an aspect of it. But the way that he wants to do it, the idea of Elliot and Gretchen paying for the surgery, taking care of his family financially, he won't allow it. Even in the final episode of the show, when Walt literally puts a mountain of money on their table and tells them, you're going to put this into a irrevocable trust to go to my son on his 18th birthday, you will not add a cent of your own money. Any money that's needed for fees comes out of my money. He says that to them. He is so dead set on only him supporting his family. No charity, no one else doing his job, the man's job, that he literally threatens them not to use any of their money to pay the fees to give his money to his kid after he's dead. Do you guys remember that scene when he threatens them in the house in the final episode of the show? The show is not a commentary on America's lack of proper, health care, right? There's some elements of that in there, but right off the bat, the show marks that off as the main thing, and very importantly, gives Walt an out. Walt, I believe, gets this out before he, goes all in. He'd already done his first cook, he'd already killed 2 people, and decided he wanted out. He gets offered money to pay for his surgery, and his response is to meet back up with Jesse and get back into making drugs again. Through all those events, he not only ends up killing more people, he poisons a child. He's responsible through, depending on how many layers you want to go through, Walt is responsible for the death of several children. Walt is a cold-blooded murderer of several innocent people in the show. Despite all of this, the most hated person in Breaking Bad, by far, or at least looking online at the Breaking Bad fan base, the most hated character in the show is not Walt, the pathetic man-baby who desperately vies for the approval and the respect of junkies and criminals and murderers, and sacrifices the happiness and safety of his entire family to do so, turns down all of the financial help he could possibly need because his own ego and masculinity would be bruised by it. And yet, he is the badass, epic badass Heisenberg. And Skyler is the shrill, evil bitch who won't just let her husband kill people and sell drugs and put her and her child in danger. She won't just sit back and let Walt be gone for days at a time doing God knows what, putting, most likely and definitely, putting her infant daughter and her disabled son into mortal danger at several turns. At several points in the show, people with murderous intent towards Walt and his family break into the house. The twins break into Walt's house. Todd and the gang of neo-Nazis break into Walt's house and hold Skyler at gunpoint and threaten her. Multiple times in the show, murderous intentioned people come to the house because of Walt's actions. Literally any small turn of events. And Skyler, the child, anyone could have been there when those 2 twins were there. Walt's actions put her children, even their friends and other family members. Walt's actions get Hank and Steve Gomez fucking killed. I mean, they're, ACAB and everything, but Hank and Steve were on the low end of ACAB, okay? They were, with all other things aside besides Hank's racism, some of the good ones. Walt's actions, whether the outcomes and how bad it ends up being were necessarily his intent in the first place, time after time after time, always with the way out of going to Gretchen and Elliot. Even after he told Gretchen to fuck off, guarantee they still would have paid for his treatment. Up until he got outed as Heisenberg, I bet he could have gone to Gretchen and Elliot and they would have paid for his treatment. And I think he knew that. And yet he didn't. He continued killing people, getting himself deeper and deeper and deeper, getting himself, his family, his friends, and other bystanders in more and more mortal danger. All because of his ego And then you know what happens at the end of the show? You know what happens in the final episode of the show, the final moments between Skyler and Walt, the final thing that that Walt says to Skyler. All throughout the show, Walt keeps lying to Skyler, saying, I was just doing this for the family. I was doing this for the family. I was doing this for the family. I was doing this for the family. Trying to take blame off of himself. Trying to make it seem like he's this martyred hero who's like just being tortured and attacked by his bitch wife because, he's just trying to do his best for the family. And he finally admits to her, I did it for me. I liked it. I was good at it. He admits it. He admits to Jesse that he's in the empire business. He did it for him. The character himself, at the end of the show, in his final moments speaking to Skyler, comes clean about all of it to her. He says, I felt alive, yeah. He comes clean. And yet, despite that fact, my lovely editor, Cherry, went to Twitter and decided to make a viral tweet. Now, that's where you made your first mistake, Cherry. Walter White poisons a child. Skyler White is a woman. I can't figure out which of these characters is worse. Such a fantastic tweet. Such a fantastic tweet. Link tweet. It was literally tweeted like 2 days ago, but okay. There you go. Go follow Cherry. Everyone follow Cherry on Twitter. Anyway, as you can imagine, people got very, very mad. A lot of conservatives got upset. And there was one main reply from a lot of conservatives. The one reply, the one like biggest reply that was like an attack on Skyler's character, without a doubt, what they consider to be the most morally objectionable thing Skyler ever does in the show is cheat on Walter. Quote unquote. Only she doesn't even cheat on him. Because by that point, they were already separated. She'd already expressed that she didn't love him anymore and wanted the relationship to be over. She wanted out. Like, I'm sorry, but just because there's still a legal document saying you're married doesn't mean once you say we're done, that means that now moving on is cheating? Like on a moral level? Like that's an immoral action? Also, the idea that a woman cheating on her husband, even if she did cheat, a woman cheating on her husband is even fucking close to any of the things that Walt did, even a fraction of the things that Walt did, is absurd. She literally sleeps with Ted to get Walt to stop stalking and harassing her at work. Yep. Oh, also, did we forget Walt's little breakdown at Ted's office? That scene where he literally like tries to pick up, like goes to Ted's building like while she's there working and tries to pick up the potted plant and throw it through Ted's window and it doesn't break. He has like a fucking public freak out and gets nearly arrested and pepper sprayed. Did you guys forget when he gets fucking pepper sprayed for mouthing off to the cop because he's having a bad day and has little like he has multiple public meltdowns that result in him either getting arrested or nearly getting arrested. Multiple public meltdowns in which he has like a "do you know who I am" moment with a cop. And it gets him in trouble, despite the fact that he is literally currently an outlaw, basically, without, his identity being out there. And yet he's starting shit with cops because it makes him feel good. It makes him feel like a man. And also he has no self-control. God, it's such a well-written show. Holy fuck. Without a doubt, the actual worst thing that Skyler ever does on a moral level in the show is become an accomplice to Walt's crimes. Later in the show, Skyler eventually sort of, in a sort of Stockholm syndrome type way, ends up becoming an accomplice to Walt. Not in any of the more nefarious aspects of his criminal stuff. It's for money laundering. She helps him launder money, and it's very clearly so that she can get the money from it to take care of her and her family after Walt dies, which she's waiting for and kind of like, excited for. He's also super fucking reckless when he meets Tuco. It's kind of hard to feel mad at Walt when he's dealing with Tuco, when he blows him up with the stuff there, because only Walt walked into that building, and he was doing it out of Walt legit gets himself nearly gets himself killed multiple times just to be macho. So it's hard to tell at what points Walt does things out of care for Jesse, like whether or not that was him angrily going in to sort of avenge quote unquote Jesse, or if that was Walt feeling like really pissed off that somebody beat up his property. Jesse is his bitch. Tuco doesn't get to beat up his bitch. It's hard to tell where Walt's actions are based on his care for Jesse, because he definitely cares for Jesse, and his feeling of superiority and borderline ownership of Jesse. Does anybody else get that same vibe? By the way, nothing I'm saying here is anything the show creators themselves disagree with. Like literally, have any of you watched El Camino? Did you watch the final episode of the show? Literally, all of it is made the most obvious in the finale for the people that were too fucking media blind and illiterate to figure out what the message of the show was. Sounds like he cares for Jesse the same way he cares about his family. Yeah, the way that Walt loves people, especially later in the show, is abusive. He's abusive to everybody in his family by the end of the show. Maybe not like Holly, even Holly, yeah, he uses Holly as a way to torment Skyler at many points. And not only that, but he also uses Walt Jr., Flynn, multiple times to torment Skyler by like love bombing him and kind of implicitly being like the cool dad while mom's being a bitch who hates dad, like the whole scene where like Walt Jr.'s like, Mom, why won't you stop being a bitch? Like, such a good show, dude. Holy fucking shit. If you guys have not watched Breaking Bad, it is so goddamn good. The political commentary is very left wing, but it's like the bell curve of IQ scores of Breaking Bad fans. On one end, you've got like the conservatives who are like, nah, the show's not about how we need more access to healthcare and whatnot. That's not what the show's about. And then in the middle, like the top part of the bell curve, you've got Breaking Bad is a show about a man who's forced to turn to making meth in order to pay his medical bills. And then on the other side of the bell curve, the smarter, higher IQ side of it, you've got Breaking Bad is not a show about a man having to turn to drugs to make money to pay his medical bills. It's not a commentary on America's healthcare. I'm sorry, but Breaking Bad is not a commentary on American healthcare. There are scenes that touch on it, but it is not the focus. It was necessary for Walter's character development that he always, from basically the beginning of the show, had an out. That he always had an out to quit doing drugs and start, having a normal life and to, leave this dangerous career he started. And yet the only thing stopping him at every turn is his pride, his ego, and his bruised masculinity. When feminists talk about toxic masculinity, and I'm not talking about your BuzzFeed social media feminists, I'm talking about your feminist scholars, the types of feminist academics that know what the fuck they're talking about, that cite studies and cite data and statistics and have fucking books and shit to point to. When they refer to toxic masculinity, these are the things, these character traits that Walt has are what they're talking about. Things like Walt's inability to accept help, Walt's willingness to hurt others in order to, make other people think that he is, a masculine badass. The things he, when he rolls up into Tuco's place trying to act like a badass because he wants to impress a bunch of drug dealers, stuff like that. The things that get his family into danger. These are the aspects of toxic masculinity. These are the things, the common aspects of masculinity that are not present in every man or everybody who presents masculinely by any means, and yet they are still common. These are the aspects of masculinity, the toxic masculinity, the toxic aspects that feminists critique. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed my Breaking Bad rant and you want to see more from me, then remember, this content is able to keep on being produced by me because of the support from you guys. This is my full-time job, and without the support of my loving fans, I would not be able to continue pumping out content for all of you. I'd be working very much like Jimmy McGill. I would be working, in a Cinnabon in Omaha with a black and white filter because after me and Sherry did a call earlier today, and Sherry said, I always imagined after a YouTuber just kind of disappears off the internet, there's some disappear like from Breaking Bad out there that like gives them a new life, and they're just, out there somewhere like they're in witness protection. In all seriousness, if you want to support me, you can do so in a variety of ways for completely free. You can like my stream, you can comment down below, you can subscribe and ring the bell icon so YouTube tells you when I go live or upload a new video. And of course, if you've got money for it, and you want to support me financially so I can buy stuff such as food and lock and load, that makes my loads literally like 3 times larger than my normal loads, which is absurd. And that's very important when you're busting on all the MILFs. Listen, MILFs love giant loads, okay? If you're out there hunting MILFs, make sure you're taking your lock and load. The bigger the load, the better. They always love it. If you want to support that, you can always donate, subscribe, or gift a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or you can support me on YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, or even Patreon. With all that said, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and have a good one.